Good evening, fellow humans. How are we? Homo sapiens. We're doing well. Okay, so week 3 reflection. Let's get into it. Oh, I'm Nick, by the way. I don't know if you figured that out yet, but I'm Nick, by the way. Let's talk about some things we talked about in week 3, specifically coming of age stories. In the beginning of the week, we were finishing up, or midweek, we were finishing up some of the final coming of age stories, some short stories. Inventory specifically was the one my group did, so we really got a deep connection on that one. And, wrapping up the coming of age unit, we can speak to some things that were in the unit that stood out to me and that were significant in our discussions and things. Specifically, we talked about what is popping up. Okay, whatever. Specifically, we talked about how in a lot of these coming of age stories, the gender of the narrator often influences in the way that they talk about the things they talk about in the story. In some stories with male protagonists, they a lot of times adhere to gender norms of being stoic and suppressing emotion and being a good old boy and things like that. And oftentimes in some of the coming of age stories that are narrated by female characters or female narrators, oftentimes we get a lot more expression of emotion, a lot more expression of heartfelt connection and things and things that are more women-like, which that's the gender norm, gender expectation, gender imposed upon people. It really got me thinking about how when we think of these coming of age stories, oftentimes they're an internal monologue. We think of them oftentimes because the coming of age is an internal process. Physically it is puberty, we know that, but internally it is a transition from being an infant, innocent, naive child to a experienced, hardened adult. And oftentimes that transition is influenced by the gender norms that are present within our society that tell us the way in which we should transition into womanhood or boyhood. Manhood, that's it. Okay. Lost me for a second there. Womanhood and manhood, there are predetermined roles for us that we have to fulfill, and so that really influences the way in which we think we should move forward going in the coming of age moment. It really got me thinking about how, speaking on this internal monologue, how this internal monologue really is focused on, human connection and how do I interact with the people around me? How do I act like a girl? How do I act like a boy? How do I fulfill the things that people expect me to be? Crazy things. And it really gets me thinking about how as the generations go on and how though we still have societal norms present, societal expectations and prescriptions are definitely present, definitely still around. It's really interesting to see how this generation, Gen Z, me, is really working with these gender expectations and really flipping the script. You know what I mean? We're really sticking it to the man, in ways that have not been seen before. Because I can even recollect on my grandmother's generation who, man is in house, wrong. Man is out, man is breadwinning, man is providing for his family, man is stoic, man is, strong, courageous, and things like that, bear, things like that. That's what we kind of get. And then the woman is the woman of the household, the home economics major, the sews, makes the kids clothes, makes the kids foods, cooks for the man, cleans the house. You know how it goes. You've seen it before. But it's really cool to see how from generation to generation, from my grandmother's generation to my mother's generation to some intermediate generations because my mom's old, to me, because I have brothers who are in different generations than me, to even see that specific, chop lineup, whatever you want to call it, how in each of those generations, how gender norms are being flipped or how being manipulated, twisted, however you want to do it. How, in like, for instance, the train, whatever, it does what it does. How in my grandmother's generation, like I stated before, they stuck to some rules and they stuck to them, and that was it. That was how it was. Like, but then we get to like my mother's generation. Well, that whole thing about mom raises the kids, staying home mom, takes care of the house, and da da da. Well, it was kind of flipped on its head because my mom had a full-time job just like my dad. They were both breadwinning. They were both making money. So it really influenced in my generation. Stay-at-home dad, regular occurrence. Working from home, regular occurrence. That whole prescribed, you go out, get the money, I stay at home, feed the kids or whatever, out the door. And it's really interesting to see what's the next generation going to be like. How are they going to deal with it? Because even though we say we flipped it on their head, old people still exist. Old people still got power. Old people still impose the way they think things should be on the young kids. So it's really going to be interesting to see how, like, for instance, my mother's generation is going to be old when the next generation comes out, and how their views are going to influence the generation after me, and how my views are going to influence the generation after them. It's going to be a whirlwind. That's all I got to say. It's a really good food for thought. That's what I like to say. It's scrumptious. It's very enriching. That's what I'll say. It's very tangible, palatable, delicious. So that's week 3 reflection. 3, not 6. Can't count. I thought we established that. So yeah, on to the next one. Peace out. See y'all next week.